hot. This is the solar eclipse in Leo, the hottest point of summer.
Stepped in poo for you guys. You're so cool. Just for this.
Hey Kiana.
Hello. Welcome.
What are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about the solar eclipse in Leo happening tomorrow, Saturday, August 11th, 2018, happening at exactly 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 a.m. if you're on the East Coast, and around noon if you're in Europe.
The first episode of the Magick Minute show.
Hey guys, this is Kiana Mayfield, founder and creator of OracleChamber.com, the world's first and leading transpersonal astrology website for the minds of the modern age. And for this week's Astro Nerd Report, I guess we can call it that because I know many of you don't know what I'm talking about in this section when I talk about the transits and waning squares and waxing squares and all of that, but I can commit it to memory. This week we have, obviously, the solar eclipse in Leo, 18 degrees, conjuncting Mercury Retrograde, 14 degrees, which is squaring over, making a waning square over to Jupiter in Scorpio, which is in trine to Neptune and Pisces retrograde. As well, we have a T-square between Saturn and Capricorn.
What was that? That thing was huge. I don't know. That was Saturn and Capricorn. It's gone. It was big and black. It was huge.
You guys didn't see my near-death experience just now, but we have a T-square between Saturn retrograde in Capricorn squaring over to the opposition between Venus and Libra opposing Chiron and Aries retrograde. And we have Uranus going retrograde in Taurus, and there is a yod happening between Neptune and Pisces retrograde, sextiling over to Pluto in Capricorn retrograde. And they're both making a quincunx over to exactly this north node solar eclipse. And a yod, if you guys don't know, is
Why is it circling?
a yod before I die, you guys, live on camera. A yod is a finger of God, so there is a significant spiritual emphasis on this nodal eclipse that we all have to pay attention to, that we all have to kind of work our way through and just allow the purge to unfold. So, before I continue, let me know if you guys want me to keep this Astro Nerd Report, because I'm not sure if you guys are following along with what I'm saying, all the technical details, you know. So there's a poll up here somewhere that you guys can click yes or no if you guys want me to keep this on. Now's your chance to contribute. All right. Thank you. This is the beginning.
Oh.
So it's just an introduction that I'm going to crop in.
And so now you shall begin.
Mm-hmm.
Kisses.
Solar eclipse in Leo. Final one with the north node in Leo. Third in a row in a month. It's a month's time. And Uranus just went retrograde in Taurus, squaring it. And Mercury is retrograde in Leo, and we just had an inferior conjunction between the sun and the moon, the sun and Mercury, as this new moon is occurring. So, what I like to do is relate our individual experience to what's happening in the entire world. So, on a grand global scheme of things, we have Jupiter in Scorpio, where it's been for about a year now, trining over to Neptune and squaring Mercury retrograde in Leo as this solar eclipse is occurring. So what does this mean? We're all on the search for gold. We've been on the search for gold for about a year now. And the thing about Jupiter in Scorpio is that it does everything in its power to get to the gold, meaning it will destroy anything ruthlessly. It will create massive social havoc and chaos in society in order to get to something deeper, in order to get to something that we feel is missing from our lives that we feel isn't fulfilling us on a deeper level. You know, you see it on multiple individual levels. You have your relationships, your job, your business, your family, right? These connections are disintegrating in a way because they're not fulfilling us. The surface level experience of all of these different areas of our life are bringing us a sense of emptiness. And so Jupiter in Scorpio for the past year now has been asking us to go within, to go deeper, and to ruthlessly expose everything that is not bringing us true happiness. And so Mercury is going over to Jupiter now. Mercury being kind of like a lower octave of Jupiter, in that Jupiter is our higher social mind, whereas we're socially aware of all that's going on with the whole of humanity, right? Our entire direction, where we're focusing our mental energy. And Mercury is our personal experience, our personal autobiography, if you will, our personal mental process of how we interpret our life. And with it squaring over to our social awareness in Leo, being retrograde, I think actually that this solar eclipse conjuncting Mercury retrograde is one of the luckiest aspects we can have. I know that's kind of a controversial point of view because Mercury retrograde is seen as this sort of like devil me care type of aspect where everything goes wrong. But the thing is, that's only if you're not using Mercury correctly. That's only if you're not willing to individually participate in how your mind perceives the world, right? Because we have a habit overall of sort of letting the images come to us, meaning society puts out movies, let's say. Society puts out new music. Society gives us the news, the broadcast of what's going on in the world, and gives us a lens, an overview of what we should be expecting because this is going on. This is how you should think. This is how you should perceive it. This is how you should value it, right? And when we're not willing to think for ourselves, of course, that's going to be the easy thing to do, right? Everything's bad because they say it's bad. Everything is beautiful because they say it's beautiful, right? And Mercury in Leo itself is a very, very creative aspect. And when we're not using it individually, like the retrograde requires us to, then you'll see everything start to be exposed for what it actually is. And that's when everything breaks down, right? That's when our perceptions of reality are kind of like, you know, we didn't see that coming, but we did because we were kind of creating the story as we go. Mercury is the storyteller. And with this solar eclipse conjuncting it, I think now more than ever, we have the ability perceptually and mentally to be able to create our future. You know, astrology in and of itself, the art of astrology, astrologers, most of them try to tell you what the future holds, right? Like we're karmically destined to go along this path until we get to this certain area where we're looking for things to be better than they are now. But the thing about this moment in particular is that we're standing on the edge of a precipice where we can either continue to go along with this sentiment, right? We can continue to give in to the capitalization on our fears and our desires and our emotional needs for security with Saturn being retrograde in Capricorn, right? We have this pull towards the father complex, not just, you know, mother and father in the parental family matrix, but in the entire society. Like we look at the world as being our womb. We look at the government as being our source of security. Like as long as you know, I have a good reputation among my comrades and associates, right? As long as I make enough money, as long as I am seen to be successful, as long as I have a relationship, you know, I can get by fairly easily because I'm normal, right? I'm normal because no one will point at me. I'm not gonna be seen. I'm not gonna stand out, so I'm not gonna be targeted. And Saturn in Capricorn provides this kind of social blanket where we can all lay and we find our power. We find our integrity through this structure, through this matrix. And there is a T-square happening at this solar eclipse as well between Saturn squaring the opposition between Venus and Libra and Chiron and Aries, which has gone retrograde as well. And when you look at Chiron, Chiron is like the supermoon. It is the bridge between our solar system, our individual solar system, aka the entire structure of our human form, and the galaxy, the greater galaxy of which humanity is a part. The greater humanity, the greater mind of humanity is a part, aka God, right? And so with Chiron opposing Venus in Libra, which has to do with our social cultural values, right? The laws we make as far as what is socially and culturally appropriate, what is valuable, what we get meaning from. I said Venus in Libra has to do with our social cultural values, what we perceive as good and true for our being, right? What relationships we involve ourselves in, the laws we make in society that keep us basically sane, right? That keep us together and compromise. And so with Venus squaring over to Saturn and opposing Chiron, there has to be a major shift in our laws, in our social structure, because, you know, you see it all over the place. Men are becoming women, women are becoming men. You know, the family dynamic is being changed. Relationships are no longer as meaningful as they once were. And the thing about relationships too is romance didn't used to exist. It was a law that was socially constructed for us to be able to compromise in some way and come together in a new way. And new ways of coming together are being brought into shape, right? But the thing about that is we have to make room for it. And so there has to be sort of an eradication of anything that is no longer appropriate for our modern age. So Venus and Libra. Obviously, Libra rules Venus. And it is the air aspect of Venus, meaning because Venus rules Taurus as well, but it's the earth, physical nature of Venus. And now we're in the archetypal phase of Venus, meaning this is where all the laws are made. This is where all the compromises are created. This is where we have the higher social ideals of how we can come together. Our individual Venus natures can come together and create harmony, right? Create a self-sufficient whole. Venus is the maker of wholes, the maker of archetypes, the maker of images. And since this is a waning square between Venus and Saturn retrograde, Venus has to be applied individually and collectively with consciousness. And the way to do that is to tap into the highest nature of Venus that we can. And the highest nature of Venus in Libra is understanding on a mental and emotional level the higher purpose of a group of human beings, the higher purpose of the ideals that we are coming together for. It's almost like the mastermind, if you've ever heard of that concept. It's when people come together with a common purpose towards a common aim, and in that capacity they are able to dominate in areas where they are weak, because they have people along who we all have our own strengths and weaknesses, right? And wherever we are weak, the people we commune with, the people we partner with, the people we integrate with are meant to fulfill that area. And so with Venus squaring Saturn, it's almost like we're seeing all the places where we have not been fulfilled in the areas where we are weak. We're seeing all the areas where we've compromised in ways that are detrimental to the higher purpose of our coming together. And in that respect, we have to remember the higher code to which we are all coming together for, to which we must subscribe our beings to, subscribe our souls to, right? Because, you know, we're going through all this transformation. We're digging deep. We're trying to find the gold. We're tapping into our creative potential through the solar eclipse in Leo. But what does that all mean if we don't have something, some ideal to which we're all striving towards, to which we're all dedicating ourselves to? You know, we think of Scorpio as a sign of commitment, but Libra is the actual signing of the paper, right? It's when we actually meet the other. It's when we fall in love. It's when we are, our entire individual being, which has remained isolated up until now, comes out, steps out of its cave into the light of the world. And we see things for what they actually are, because we're meeting the other. And the other is everything that is not us. And where has that been contaminated? Where has it been corrupt? Where have we only been coming together because of our ancestral tendencies towards the need for security, right? Towards the need to keep things the way they are. You know, any retrograde planet, and since Saturn is retrograde now, any retrograde planet has to be applied with consciousness, has to be applied individually. It's when the individual contributes their voice into what the planet represents. And Saturn represents our ego. Saturn represents our security in society. It represents our social standing. It represents the karmic imprint we've been given, like the structure, the body. You know, you have your essence inside of you, that's the moon, right? But almost like if you know anything about blacksmithing, they have to create sort of this cast, this mold, in, I don't know, some type of, what's it called?
A casing?
Yeah, they have to create a casing, but it's out of this material, right, that they have to forge. And
like a mold, right?
Yeah,
they're molding it.
Saturn is the mold. But the particular weapon, let's just say whatever material is being made, is the moon, right? It's the essence of who we are, and it's individual to everyone. But Saturn is the casing. It is the cast, it is the mold, and we can't necessarily physically get outside of Saturn. It would be kind of breaking a law of nature, right? And Saturn is the purity of nature. And so we have certain comfort zones that we're all used to. We have certain tendencies and habit patterns and laws that we all find comfort in. But the thing that you want to ask yourself now is if it's really going to get you where you want to go. And with this rising, this uprising of the creative soul in our culture now, with the need for the artist to come out into the open, into the light once more, many of these social structures that we all depend on have to be questioned. And it's not just in society you know? It comes down to everything that has been a source of dependency in your life. Whether that's a relationship, whether that's a position in your family, whether that's your name, whether that's your gender, whether that's your sexual orientation, you know, your job, anything that you think you want, anything that gives you a sense of identity. It has to be questioned, because the only way you're going to find your identity is by treading in the unknown path. So the most important thing to remember in this solar eclipse, especially with it being a Leo and Mercury Retrograde being a part of it, squaring over to Jupiter, is that humanity is a marketplace, right? All of us are contributors of this marketplace. And if you are not satisfied with the way society is directing us towards, if you're not satisfied with the way things are progressing in the world, with the direction that everything seems to be taking, you have to stand up. You have to reclaim your voice. You have to come to the surface and say your part. You have to say your line. You can't expect a broken system to change, which is what the South Node in Aquarius has been teaching us, and Uranus in Taurus is kind of revealing to us, especially with it retrograde now. And Uranus in Taurus, there's multiple different ways to perceive this aspect, right? The thing about it is there's this higher consciousness coming in, and we're feeling it on a visceral level. This is Taurus we're talking about, so it's
It's Taurus. It's Taurus we're talking about. What the hell? Well, that was a perfect example of that. I'm in nature, you know. Taurus is attacking me.
Uranus in Taurus is about the transcendence of our physical nature. It's about the light body coming into the physical nature and kind of pushing, almost like
birthing.
Yeah, pushing, and also like an excretion process, where all of the filth, all of the things that the heaviness, the weight, the karmic loads that we kind of just keep in our system, right? It's all coming out. It's like
Purge.
Yeah. And the reason this is happening is because Uranus and Taurus wants the light body to shine through our physical nature. It wants the soul to come to life inside of the body. The only way for us to move forward in society or individually is for us to be here. And for us to be here, our soul has to be here. It has to have a root, a rooted foundation. And Uranus and Taurus is making room for that. It's making room for that by pushing out everything that is not valuable to your soul's evolution or to the collective evolution. And so we're seeing a lot of dirty things happening in the world. And the point is not to judge it. The point is not to sit there and kind of just expect it to heal itself. But to be brave enough, because Leo requires the utmost amount of courage, to be seen. And the only way to be seen is if you channel all of the anger you're feeling right now with Mars in Aquarius retrograde. And it's a very subconscious anger. It may not even be anything that's happening to you that's triggering the anger. But since we're all connected to each other on an electromagnetic level, and all suffering is humanity suffering, we realize that it's almost like leaving your home. It's almost like leaving your home vacant and then coming home to find everything kind of strewn apart. When we leave it empty like that, when we're not present, when we're not standing up for what is ours, for who we are, then we kind of let all of these other entities into our system. We kind of let the system malfunction, and we have to come back in and fix it. We have to come back in and reclaim our property. And the same thing is happening on a spiritual and mental level. So, the only key to freedom is to create your future. And by creating your future, you have to have imagination. And a lot of people get freaked out about having imagination because they think it's an inborn trait, like a talent or a skill that you have to have in order to be able to conjure things up in your mind. But no, this is a very human trait. It's innate within all of us. It's not something exclusively for the elite of humankind. So the thing about imagination is it's the foundation of our humanity. And stepping back into that foundation requires us to believe in our voice, to trust ourselves over any irrelevant and outdated structure that tells us what to think and what to feel. We have to believe in what we think and what we feel, even if it means going against everything we've ever known. In summary, the most important thing to keep in mind during this solar eclipse in Leo is 3 things. Number 1, don't be afraid to be sloppy. Because the thing about standing into our courage and becoming our true selves and speaking our voice, right, it requires failure, the constant iteration of, the materials that we can work with. It requires us to venture out from our comfort zone, right, and break patterns. So we're going to be breaking rules, a lot of rules within ourselves and within society. And it requires sort of trial and error process where we don't really know what we're doing, but we know we have to do it. Number 2, focus on being distinct, not different. Meaning, there's this stigma going around that to be an individual, we have to close ourselves off from everyone and everything, right? We have to be alone. Nobody look at me, right? Because I'm too different. I'm too much of an individual. I'm not gonna listen to anything or anyone, right? Because it comes from a fear of being overwhelmed. It comes from a fear of not trusting in yourself enough to stand tall and firm no matter what happens. And so you don't really have a base, you don't have a security, and you have to build a wall around yourself in order to keep out all the intruders, right? But the thing I want you guys to focus on is being distinct, which means just amplifying the natural uniqueness that already comes from inside of you, instead of hiding it away behind the wall that you put up to the rest of the world. Don't close yourself off. Open yourself up to everything by exposing what you actually are. And so number 3 is to surround yourself with as many like-hearted, not just like-minded, but like-hearted people in your life. The heart rules Leo, right? And so you may have people that have the same background as you. You come from the same, sort of general area, and they've always been in your life, right? These are like-minded people. They think like you, and so you like them. But the thing is, not everyone is going to have your quality of spirit. Not everyone is going to have your quality of heart. Not everyone is going to want the same things as you. Not everyone's going to believe in the same things as you, have the same values as you. And you want to surround yourself with people that do, because this is where actual human power lies, in the congregation of multiple human beings with open hearts who are directed to a common purpose, to something higher than themselves that they can come together and compromise on. So, the first thing to do about that, before you can attract these like-hearted people, is to recognize your own superpower, to recognize what your heart actually is. Because before you can send out a signal, there has to be life. There has to be light before there is radiance. So, thank you guys very much for watching. This is episode number 1 of the Magick Minute show, which is a new series I've put together because there is this stigma going around in the spiritual community that you have to arrive at some certain mountain peak, some certain spiritual state of consciousness in order to get the things that you want in your life, for the life and the consciousness to manifest in the way that we're all kind of striving towards. But I'm here to debunk the myth that you have to arrive at some certain state, because there is magic in every minute, there is magic in every moment, and if we can just open our eyes to what's directly in front of us, we can discover the essential meaning, the quintessence within every experience, and become more human by every minute. So, thank you guys very much for watching. I know I haven't been here for about a year, but I've been working on what I actually want to bring to the table, because it's not enough for me to just say my spiel about what's going on and tell you how to live your life. That's not my intention here. My intention is to open you up to an invisible realm that we're all a part of, to something magical that we're all playing a significant role in. And I think especially now in our time, we have more access and more opportunity to be able to tap into this invisible realm, because this is where all of human power lies, and it's the only way, by tapping into our creative potential, into our imagination, that we're able to direct the course of where we actually want to take not only our lives, but all of society. What world do we want to build? And before we can build the world in the physical, we have to build it in the mental, we have to build it in the spiritual, we have to believe in it wholeheartedly, and to know exactly what it looks like before we can put it on paper, before we can take the steps necessary for it to unfold. So my friends, I love each and every one of you. And remember this one thing about this solar eclipse. This is the resurrection of the Renaissance. Celebrate your creative potential. Celebrate who you are authentically. Become who you are authentically. Open your heart. Share your message. And don't be afraid to trust your voice. And question of the week: what is your definition of freedom?
Au revoir. Bonne soirée, bonne journée. L'addition, s'il vous plaît.